What is the current state of AI in defense? What role does industry play in maturing its application and deployment? How can AI power decision advantage for the U.S. and its allies? And what can we learn from the SPADE Conference 2024? I welcome back Terry Halverson, former CIO at the U.S. Defense Department, senior executive at IBM, and host of this year's conference. I was wondering if you could tell us, Terry, what were some of the key objectives of this year's conference regarding, say, the integration of AI and Gen AI in defense applications? What were some of the objectives you wanted to get out of this meeting?
So, as you know, this is a thought leadership event for us. So it's less about specific products and more about the process and outcome. So I think the first thing we wanted to do here was have a mutual exchange of data and I'd say education between the government and industry. And one of the key factors was for everybody to understand you really have to have quality data to do successful either artificial or augmented intelligence. I think both industry and government attendees walked away with a clear understanding that, if you take AI and apply it to our kind of standard data, what you're really going to get is a bad decision faster. You do have to stay and spend the time to mature the data, make sure of the data auditability and traceability, understand everything from the accuracy of that data to kind of the context of the data. And I really left the conference and even at every site feeling we advanced that together, both the government and the attendees, that is truly understood. I think there was a lot of comments and a lot of discussion about, that is right. It is, the data is key here. And you just can't walk in and say, hey, let me have a bag of AI and I'll put that in and use decisions. You've got to really work with the data and understand it. And then I think the other thing that we learned, and I mean we in the industry sense, we all knew that it was important that this be a coalition, joint, allied discussion. But we didn't really understand just how important until we heard every single senior speaker work that into their discussion. It came up in every panel. So I think that was the other takeaway, that how do we work this across not just individual nation lines, but how do we work this internationally to deliver systems or deliver the capability to be truly past just interoperability. And we talked a lot about speed. The speed of decision in warfare continues to increase. And what we talked about a lot was how do we make AI advance things at mission speed? To do that, there's some technical things you got to have. You got to have connectivity and the interchange of that data flow technically. I've got to be able to get the data to that, coalition commander in Europe or that coalition partner in Asia, wherever it is. I've got to be able to get it there. And that's something that we frankly need to improve. And that was a good discussion. I think the last takeaway was, yes, we're going to use AI, and yes, we're going to augment, decision making with AI. But there was consensus that we also have to be conscious of both the process, the responsibility, and the ethical behavior with AI. Part of that means keeping, particularly when we're talking about lethality, keeping a human in the loop, ensuring the integrity of data. That's got to be a principle. So I think that was the three kind of topic areas that I really think were kind of the results that came out.
That's great. And, you mentioned that the theme of SPADE 2024 was, powering decision advantage. Can you, before I ask my next question around how AI can help that, can you explain to us or give us an overview of the concept of what you mean by decision advantage?
This gets pretty simple. Making decisions that impact mission faster than the threat. And it really is being able to influence the battlefield much quicker than your threat and make much more refined decisions at a faster pace that's inside of the threat's decision loop.
So you kind of alluded to this a little bit, though, Terry. How can AI power that for the U.S. and its allies?
So, here's the first thing. So one of the things that we have some data on is if I apply AI to some of these processes, everything from cybersecurity to logistics, I can eliminate maybe average a third of the time that it currently takes a human to go through that data. Well, if that gives me a big advantage there. I also then can present that data in a format that allows the commander, in this case, to be able to see that data in a way that he can digest it and get into his decision faster. One of the things we heard from commanders was, listen, I'm getting inundated with data, not with insights. And through AI, being able to do the summaries faster, do what I'll say the bulk review. So let's say you're looking at pictures. You can tell the AI, I need to really focus in not just on the pictures, but I want to focus in on these type of vehicles with these type of weapons and in these type of positions. That would take a human a long time to do that. The AI can go through those, just so fast. Then you can say to AI, well, now give me that next level of detail that says, of those ones you subset, how many of them appear to be, and you have to define what those characteristics are, we define it, appear to be in a position of readiness to engage. It's another big time saver and important factor. And then you can say, okay, present that data in a visual to the commander using the following, kind of, again, characteristics. That gives an analyst, he can actually look almost at what the finished product's going to be before the commander and go through it and then add the experience factors, the human analytic pieces. That process can, and maybe it took, 4 hours in the past, is now done in an hour. And, people say, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of time. Battlefield situation, 20 minutes can be the matter of life or death. The advantage we're given is huge. It gives whoever gets that speed right and is in that decision loop much faster. It also gives you much better time to react to something else the threat is doing, and then impose actions on them that disrupt them to a much higher degree.
Terry, as you look at the panels, as you look at some of the senior executive defense folks that were at the conference, I was wondering if they shared any examples of how, during their presentations or during the conversational exchanges, how they are leveraging these technologies currently in their operations.
In every sense, in every senior person was giving us examples of the first thing I would say of critical decisions. They are now using AI to do critical decisions. Assist. The man in the loop is making the decision, but to better prepare that human who owns that decision to make a better decision, that's happening today. And it's happening today not just in the business and support sides of defense, but it is happening on the side. So one of the examples I think I can talk about, one of the things that's growing more and more of use in defense circles is the use of open source data. I think we could talk about Ukraine as an example. It's been well documented. Ukraine traffic data played a key factor in helping the Ukrainian forces move ahead of and be able to anticipate where the Russian forces were going and build responses off of that, tactical responses. That integration was if not full AI, was certainly powered by machine learning, and the later stages, and now it's got true AI helping them integrate that. And people ask, well, why is that hard? Well, first of all, if you're in defense, you're used to getting your data from defense systems that you know are trusted, that have a reliability factor built into them, that I don't have to question the integrity of the data. Well, now I'm taking data from sources I have no control over. I don't have reliability in there. I don't have, kind of experts that are working these systems from a defense standpoint. This is purely like traffic radio maybe, or, pictures from the traffic helicopters. How do I integrate that? And AI has been very good, as we talked about, improving, knowing that it was truthful, being able to collate and organize the various different inputs of the open source data, and again, present it in a format that a commander could establish trust factor in. That's the other biggest thing in AI is you got to trust the AI. And it's probably the area that has, in defense, slowed the adoption down. And I think that's actually been a good thing. But that's now becoming less of a problem. We've adopted, we've learned how to process, we've learned how to do some of those things to make sure that open source data is as near to the quality of the data as we get from the battlefield systems that were designed to do that. That's going to be a continuing issue, because we're going to use more and more open source data. And every one of the leaders talked about, how do I better use the open source data, and how do I raise the trust level of that open source data?
Terry, what are the anticipated challenges in scaling up AI and, say, Gen AI projects from pilot phases to full deployment in defense operations?
Probably people is the number one. Yeah, because you got to have enough people to understand what they're doing. Yeah, it is a skill set, and that it's a problem in industry, and it's a problem in the government. Working together, certainly it doesn't reduce it, but it can help spread that talent better. And I do think that's one of the reasons we're seeing better cooperation, is there's just not enough people to not do that. And I think everybody recognizes that. I think funding is going to be another, and for two reasons. One, some of it's going to require some additional funding. I'm heartened by what I have seen in some recent releases. I mean, the Senate is, arguing, but very bipartisan, that there needs to be more money spent on AI. But then within the defense departments across the globe, this is going to shift money from, say, programs into AI, because AI is a better way. Shifting money in programs is always hard. So that I see as one of the challenges that's going to be faced, is how do we shift that money, and how do we shift it at the speeds we need to shift it at? And then trust. We have got to educate not just commanders, but soldiers, sailors, airmen, civilians that are all helping the implementation of this, so that they trust it. But there's still a lot of mistrust out there about AI, and misunderstanding about what it does and doesn't do. That's also going to be a major challenge.
This has been a special edition of the Business of Government Hour on how AI can power decision advantage in defense operations with Terry Halverson, former CIO at the U.S. Department of Defense, senior executive at IBM, and host of this year's SPADE 2024 Defense Conference. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or on your favorite podcast app, and as always at businessofgovernment.org.